Welcome back to Nuts on Cars. So it's been a while since we did a video, and we've actually had this car for just over 12 months, so I thought it was about time we shared this one on the channel. It is a 2004 996 Carrera 4S. It's finished in my favourite colour combination, which is midnight blue with the grey leather. It's manual, it's a coupe, and it's done 53,000 miles. So in my eyes, in the purist size as such, I think it's as good as it gets for a 996. So yeah, just going to talk you through the spec on this one, what to look out for when looking at a 996 in general, what's it been like to own, what's it like to drive, and give you a couple of drive-bys for a couple of sound clips as well. So if we start with the spec, so with the 996 at the time, the C4S was actually only £2,500 more than a Carrera 4. And for that, you got quite a bit for your money, which is probably why most people went down this route. So for that, you get the turbo body, which you can obviously see straight away, bigger hips, wider arches, fatter bum. It really is, it's got quite a bit more presence than if you look at a 996 next to it, they look ever so skinny in comparison. So to look at very much like the turbo, the only thing it's missing really is the vents down the side. You actually also get turbo suspension. You get the turbo look wheels, even though they aren't hollow like they are on the turbo, so they are a bit heavier, but they look identical, and turbo brakes. So as I say, for £2,500 to get all that seems good value to me. As we come round, now the masterpiece in my eyes of a 996 C4S is the bum, which I think the 996 gets a bit of bad press really in terms of being the ugly duckling of every 911 ever made, but I don't think it gets much better at the back than that with the red strip. So yeah, that for me is the best of the best. Now again, with the turbo you get the big fat spoiler. With this, bit cleaner lines and that famous rear strip, so it's a big yes from me. Now with 996s you do have to be a little bit careful because there's a lot of information out there obviously about the engines and that they are a little bit sensitive. So this car hasn't had any IMS work or bore score work as far as we're aware, which is always a risk on something like this because they are renowned for it. The only thing we've done, and previous owners of this car have done, is it's been serviced every year, bang on the dot, even though they are 2 years intervals on the 2004 models. So in my eyes, that's how preventative work really is, to go over the top with the servicing. It barely does any miles anyway, and hopefully just pray for the best really. So again, with the C4S, you get quite a bit standard anyway. This car, as I say, is finished in grey. You've got the ruffled leather seats. Probably wouldn't be my first choice. I personally would prefer the sport seats with the standard interior, standard leather. But again, when you're looking at one of these, you can't really be that specific. They get things like your suede headlining, which I believe is standard on a C4S. Spec-wise, they did change on the model years with this, so I'll run through the kind of standouts, but they might have been an option, they might have been standard in this model year. So you've got things like Bose, which is pretty good. You've got PCM, which is your nav. To be honest, pointless because it's so dated now. It's got a glove box because some of the 996s in the early model years didn't, so that's pretty handy. And then it's also got electric memory seats, so that's actually, if you can figure out how to use it, is pretty good. So spec-wise, these days, pretty basic. It's got things like climate control, but it is dated now. It's a 20-year-old car, so what do you expect? And things like we've had to spend some money on the aircon to get that back up and running, but yeah, nice enough place to be, just as you'd expect a 20-year-old 911 to be really. So what we'll do, we'll go for a drive and see what we think. So what's it like to drive a 996 C4S? Now, if you're in the market for a Porsche under £30,000, and you're looking for pure driving thrills and fun, I would actually recommend you go and buy a Boxster or a Cayman. Now, that probably sounds a little bit harsh, but having previously owned a Cayman, I can tell you that this isn't as good to drive. But what it does offer is something that the Cayman and Boxster can't. So if you're looking for that something special every time you turn the key and go for a drive, that special occasion, that ownership feeling, that I'm in a 911, I've got that engine in the back, I've got that analogue raw feel, which in some ways now feels quite old-fashioned. This is not a modern 911 anymore. As soon as you jump in, there's quirky bits like the seating position. You actually feel quite high in them, so that takes a little bit of getting used to, especially without the sports seats. But what it does offer, as I say, is those things I've just mentioned, and things like old-fashioned steering feel and a long throw on the gearbox. I know a lot of people change those to short throws, but the noises and the sensations and the feel you get from it are more special than I came in a Boxster, but they're just not as good and not quite as fun in my eyes. Being a normal sort of Carrera 4 in any of the 911 range, again, it offers you that sheer security, and it is so poised and precise and planted down a road that you cannot fault it for that at all. You drive it quite fluid, you don't drive it on the limit because you're never really going to get there, but it is still so enjoyable. Now, to put that into perspective, even though what I've just said, I actually sold my Cayman and kept this. It's one of those things that's really hard to explain, where worse is actually better, if that makes sense. It's just about that special occasion, that raw, older 911 feel, and like you're buying into a piece of history really, which you just don't get from anything else. For me, it has a special place, and I really think that feeling that you get from them is just going to get stronger and stronger as they get older. I really think they're a strong investment. I mean, you can never really call them an investment, because especially in the 996, I think realistically you've got to chuck a couple of £1,000s a year at it to sort of keep it up to date, and any little sort of things that crop up in the sort of, they call it 996-itis, which is a thing. So yeah, can't really call it an investment, but your money's going to be safe. So I would highly recommend it. It's got a special place in my heart. For me, it's the best looking 911, and yeah, so I would highly recommend anyone to go out and get one. So there we are. That's hopefully given you an insight into the ownership and what's it like to have a 996 C4S. In conclusion, are there better driver cars in the 911 range? Probably. But in terms of value for money at the moment, in my eyes, and in terms of nostalgia, looks, spec, ownership, the way it makes you feel, I think you can't really go wrong. So yeah, give us a thumbs up if you like the video. And subscribe if you want to see some more, and we will see you soon.